All right, Vinnie Fisher here, back with another show of Total CEO. Hey, Total CEO, for all of you who don't know, is I go out there in the country and find great CEOs disrupting the marketplace that they're in, doing some really cool things, but more importantly, helping small businesses succeed at what they do. So today I'm super excited to have a friend and fellow comrade in a niche that's very near and dear to my heart, John Pollock, the CEO of Financial Gravity. Hey, John, how you doing, bud?
Hey, thanks for having me.
I'm loving it. Hey, I love this idea, what we're going to talk about. And before we get into some of those details, everybody, I want you to know that John owns a, can I say a public company now? Is Financial Gravity?
It is public, yeah.
That's amazing, man.
There's a whole conversation around that, but yeah.
Well, we're going to get into that today if time allows us. But John, before we deep dive into a bunch of the things you're doing and some really cool stuff, remember this community is filled with a bunch of owners and businesses who are looking to find some wisdom and some understanding and live through the daily experiences of what are going on in mine and your life and ways to do that. So before we get into all of that, can you give us a quick commercial about John Pollock and what you are up to?
So Financial Gravity was formed to help small business owners lower their personal income taxes. That's kind of the elevator pitch.
Okay.
We started out originally as a wealth management firm, and then I became successful, started getting hammered in taxes, and then found out the industry couldn't solve my problem, so I created a business to solve the problem. Very similar to what you've done with Fully Accountable. You kind of solve this problem that you want to solve for yourself.
Yeah, right.
And you realize at the end, and this is kind of the entrepreneurial journey, I think, is you run into a problem, you're like, well, what, no one's doing this? I'll do it.
Or they're doing their version of it, but it's just a little off from the problem you need solved, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So you navigate in another direction. But what I found out, being in financial services, I started going to accounting conferences. I went to financial services conferences, and I realized that the problem I wanted to solve, which is I want to pay less taxes, was not being solved on any national scale. I kept hearing, on election cycles that rich people don't pay their fair share. And then I looked at my check and said, if this isn't fair, I don't know what's fair.
Or I'm not rich enough.
Right? Oh, I'm not. Yeah, I must not be rich enough to be not paying my fair share.
Something's happening here, right? Like, if they're not paying tax, and I am. I'm apparently not rich enough. So
right. Is there like a secret room that I have to knock on, or is there a password or a handshake that I can get in, and then all of a sudden I know? Oh, so this is where all the goodies are.
Exactly.
That's actually not the case. It's just no one's. The rich have the time and energy to pay $500 an hour tax attorneys. I mean, you and I could afford to pay that, but we wouldn't get a good ROI. We don't have enough income, or our businesses aren't big enough to justify spending several $1,000s with an attorney every month. So I try to figure out how do I take all this complexity and bring it into the world of the little guy.
Yeah, you know my story.
Yeah, I mean, you're very similar.
You know my story, right? I'm a tax attorney by trade.
Right.
I'm a corporate and tax attorney. And so we were introduced by a mutual friend, Josh Felber, who seems to know everybody in the world. And so there's a shout out to you, Mr. Making Bank. And, I fell in love right away with what your thing is. I love your kind of like a tagline thing is, your accountants don't help you do what? What is your thing you say? I love it.
Yeah, so this is what I say. There are two things that everybody wants from their accountant. Number one, lower personal income taxes. And number two, numbers that help them run their business. And they do neither. And you're solving one, I'm solving the other.
Yeah, that's
how we met.
That's how we met, and that's why I'm loving that our relationship's going to continue to grow on that premise. So, what's funny is I had a guy. My faith is important to me. Like, literally seeking guidance from the Lord is something that's real critical, important to me, and it's one of the ways that I continue to mature as a man. But, I was in my tax practice. You'll love this story, and I'll make it brief and painless as possible. But I was giving advice, good, I considered, I don't think about aggressive or conservative advice. I think about advice that can withstand winning an audit, right?
Right.
That's really
legal advice.
Legal advice, right?
Right.
Not aggressive or conservative. That to me is the wrong way to look at it. So I was working through advice that was sustainable, that could win an audit, not avoid an audit, right? Because those are different questions as well. And I met with a guy at our church, great guy. He's an elder. And I said to him, I'm really struggling with this idea of tax and the government and what the Bible says about it. He looked me deadpan in the eye and said, hey, listen, the Bible says pay unto Caesar what's due to Caesar. And then he gave me a little look. He said, but it doesn't say to pay a penny more. And I fell in love with that advice the second I heard it.
Yeah, what we tell people is, look, there's about 5 pages in the 70,000 pages of tax code that says this is what you owe. The other 70,000 pages is this is how you get out of what you owe. And everyone focuses on the 5 and no one spends any time on the 70,000. So that has always been really strange to me. It's really a strange business problem when you've got an entire country that believes an entire industry does a thing the entire industry doesn't even do.
So we're on a live show, so I want to throw out a few things to people. One is, I want to we'll also put links in the show here. They're down there and they can get them. But I want to just give a quick people, if they're listening to us and they want to surf their computer, well, how can they find out more while they're talking? If they want to go, where can they find you and the company? Where do they go?
Well, Financial Gravity, there's a lot of places. I mean, there's John Pollock Inc., so that's my speaker site, and that's the John Pollock site. My podcast is on that. Financial Gravity is the corporate site. It'll have the ticker symbol. And then we have, if you're a financial advisor or an accountant, we want you to be trained. So yeah, there's this problem in the industry where I say, everyone thinks the industry does something it doesn't do. Well, we're training them so that they can do.
Nice.
And I'll talk a little bit more as we go on. What we're kind of flipping the entire financial services model. Financial services in general is profoundly broken, and we're flipping it. So we're now training both financial advisors and accountants separately in separate tracks on how to be proactive tax planners for their small business clients.
That's great. I'll tell you, the pain point that I've seen associated with the spectrum of advice that comes with tax, it's funny. I literally, right? We're in tax season. We're in this. Seems like we're always in
today's like D-Day.
Right. It seems like we're always in tax season, right?
Right.
So, recently I was talking to a wonderful CPA, nice lady, who basically I felt like in the conversation, she follows Intuit's questions and answers the form. And whatever it does is basically the guidance that she gives for planning for her client. And I thought for a second, why is that? Why do you think we get into that rut? And I have an opinion about it, but why do you think, we play it down the middle? What happens?
I think for you and I, the answer is a lot different because we just don't play it down the middle. And probably most of the CEOs watching don't play it down the middle. So that's what makes us different. But for the typical accountant, and this is something I've learned over the last 5 years, that the type of person that's attracted to the accounting industry is not us.
Right.
So we have to recognize that the reason they play it down the middle is this is in their wiring. It's who God made them. So we don't shun them for how they're made. We use them for how they're made, which is to put the right number in the right box every single time. In fact, Fully Accountable needs to hire these type of people. The problem is that they're not creative thinkers. They don't look at the numbers and go, wow, Vinnie, we had this case in our office this week. One of our clients' income doubled. None of the bookkeepers said anything. To which I said, you'll love this. If we had the Fully Accountable's dashboard, then we wouldn't have had to say anything. We would have seen it.
It would have told you. Yeah.
It would have told you. We would have known through the numbers. So this is the importance of numbers that help you run your business. That's that second component, is that we want to be able to see. So the very people that have the closest connection to your numbers don't know how to tell you if they're good or bad.
Yeah.
That is an interesting problem.
Right, because their nature, it's funny, our staff accountants, their nature is to believe in the production of the work, not in the result. So it's the same issue, right?
It's a huge issue, but you can't hire the person that you and I want. We want that creative person that knows how to do bookkeeping, but then can make that person doesn't exist.
It's a unicorn.
It's a unicorn. It's a disconnect. They probably exist, but they're so rare that we couldn't afford them.
Let's go right back. Remember, we have CEOs listening. They don't want to get involved in a tax or accounting discussion. Like, if they want to do that, they can just call me and talk about fully accountable. They don't want to do that, right? So,
well, but I would point this out to your CEOs. This is actually a problem that may exist within your business.
Absolutely.
You may want a person that does a thing that type of person isn't wired to do. So keep that in mind.
All right, so let's say, that's where I was going with this. Right, the reality is we're not going to go match a unique personality and put them into a different subset. The reality of the makeup of the accounting professional is probably organizational high, not very much detail crazy. You want that.
We want that.
Probably going to be a little more introverted, not extroverted.
Right.
So they're going to tend to struggle with communication.
Right.
They're going to tend to struggle with being what's the right word? They're going to tend to struggle with Proactive. Thank you. Great word.
Picking up the phone. And here's an example. And you'll go, yes. Have you ever sent your accountant something and they haven't responded in a week? So you followed up and they said, well, if I haven't responded, it's because I'm working on it.
Nah.
Which for a guy like you and me, that's unexceptiple. Well, if you haven't responded, you're not working on it.
Unfortunately, I'll tell the truth on myself. I might throw my pen at you in the office if you said that. I just might be, what? It's not what we do. Like,
right. So, but you have to program around that, and you have to build systems around that. So the way I explain it, and this is probably a little offensive to the accountants, is that they're factory workers. They do the same thing over and over and over again. You can't expect them to kind of jump out of that repetitive task and then pick up the phone and say,
high professional jobs or thrive on that. So, I'm a lawyer, right? I thrive on, being able to be an expert at doing the same thing over and over. When I was running my law practice, I now own an accounting company, right? I mean, we thrive on doctors as a profession. They thrive on consistency and process, right? So
systems.
I joke, a couple of my best friends are body mechanics. I tell them all the time. And so their job is to fix the body. And so, I don't think we can fault that. And I want to talk about the mindset that where the business owner is, where how can we help empower? And this is where I think, I know you're on this mission. How can we help? Because one of the things why we started as a company is the second and third failure points for businesses. You don't know your numbers, which means you don't have proper cash flow, and you have the wrong people on the team. When I talk to owners all the time, they treat it like they do tax. It's a once a year event when it's a problem, as opposed to being, let's pick on ourselves, being proactive about these elements of their business. So what have you found to be effective to break through that issue, where this is not a historical thing? This is being proactive. This is forward thinking. This is where successful businesses grow on top of themselves, not in spite of themselves.
So there's a couple things that I've done. The first is implemented a software called Culture Index, which I'm a huge fan of. We've done a whole show on it. I highly recommend you look at it. What they do is they work on a consulting agreement. So they charge a flat rate, and then you can do as many tests as you want. So we use it as hiring. So I can now say, you defined the perfect accountant. I could actually take that, plug that into a model, put it out on Indeed, have all the data come in. So they actually have to take this survey, which is less than 10 minutes, before they're allowed to upload
and go through your hiring funnel or whatever you have going.
Yeah, and what it does is it actually sorts people by the right fit before you even look at the resume. So you're so that's the first thing we do. The second thing we do, since everyone's been hired that way, is we have their profile on a little placard at their desk. So if someone walks into Vinnie's office and they look at his placard, haven't seen your profile, but I can pretty much guess because we're so similar. High pace, super impatient, get to the point. Don't
forget really good looking.
Yeah. That's not a profile. That's not a personality profile. So when someone delivers data to you, they need to deliver to it quick so that you can process the data and make a decision and get out. Whereas if I'm delivering data to an accountant, they're probably going to want a list. So I have to slow down. So by having that, we kind of created this culture of we're all people, we're all unique, we all have our roles, we need to figure out how to communicate in the style that best serves us. And by the way, this is a skill that works everywhere. Everybody that starts to come through the culture index says, can I do this on my spouse? So everybody in the office ends up doing it on their spouse,
Well,
because
my
they want to
wife's
say,
been
well,
married
this is
for
so
almost-
accurate.
My wife's been married for 21 years. She's not
She
going to
doesn't need it.
redo this. She's kind of stuck. So
Right. She'll look at it and go, yeah,
Exactly.
oh yeah.
She's just
yeah,
confirming
yeah.
what
Well,
she's
this is so
like.
right.
Yep, I already knew that.
How come I didn't take this 22 years ago?
If I only knew what I didn't know.
Yeah. Well, but opposites attract. So
Yeah, my wife reminds herself in prayer of that every day.
every day. Well, why did this happen?
I like that. So, but one of the things I've been watching lately, and I probably keyed into this just because I am one, and I'm finding we lack respect for time.
Mm.
And so I think one of the reasons I'm so anxious to have a quick tax tip, or I'm so anxious to hire the right person, and I'm looking for like a unicorn, is everything comes at me so fast that I'm losing respect for time. And so how do you deal with that in your environment with massive growth going on? You're the guy causing all those time acceleration problems.
Right.
How are you at all dealing with that issue in your environment? If so, how?
Yeah. In fact, there's the watchwords in my company are faster. John wants everything faster. So first of all, you have to recognize who you are. So in my profile, I am in the top 2% of the most impatient people on the planet. I'm assuming you're probably somewhere in that range as well.
Don't judge me, man.
I'm totally judging you. So because of that, I have to recognize that there's a couple of problems there. Number one, I want things to be faster.
Yeah.
And number two, not everybody else is going to want them to be faster.
Amen.
So it's just something I have to learn to, it's a character quality and defect. It's both. It's a quality because my company never has to worry about me not trying to be out in front. I'm always seeing 5, 10, 15 steps ahead. So that's good. It's bad because the team always, I'm trying to execute on my vision 3 years from now, and they're trying to execute on the vision for 2 years ago. Right. So you've got this tension. And I think it's good. It's good to have in a company. We run our business on the entrepreneurial operating system. So I have an integrator that kind of helps me and filters me, takes my high-level views, brings it down, and then it turns it into a very low-level view, which I couldn't do if my life depended on it. And I met your integrator at your office when I was
Rachel's awesome, man.
So she's
fully accountable in all its structure and system. Literally, I speak wisdom and understanding into it, and she brings it into practice.
Yeah, and then she says, okay, that's an interesting idea, but it needs these 25 steps.
Yeah, right.
And which you and I couldn't.
Or she might not even say it needs the 25 steps. She'll say, that's an interesting idea, old man. Go back and work on
Yeah, that's right. We're not doing that.
No, or she might do it, but she won't even say to me it's 25 steps. She'll just go do the 25 steps.
Oh, that's even better. So that's a gift. Hopefully she doesn't watch the show. You're not paying her enough.
She'll watch it, and she'll remind herself in daily prayer exactly of her issues that she has to
That's right.
And so this idea of increasing profits, and so helping clients, like what are some of the things? Oh, by the way, real quick, before we get into that, if I wanted to work with you, do you guys have already a stable of CPAs that are kind of trained in the financial gravity way? If someone wanted to raise their hand and work with you guys, how does that work?
Yes. So we bought a company called Tax Coach Software, which has 500 CPAs and EAs that use the same software. In fact, we bought the software because I didn't want my competitors to buy it.
I love it.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want competitors having our secret sauce. So we have 500 CPAs. In fact, we are rolling out in May a program called Certified Tax Master to teach CPAs and EAs. We actually have 65 spots, and they sold out yesterday.
Oh, congratulations.
Which is crazy. Yeah, that's really crazy for something that it's our first launch. We thought we might get 25.
That's great. Well, there's a high need, right?
There is a high need. So we figured, and there's 600,000 CPAs. 600,000, and none of them.
How do we deal with a problem that I just when the owner in me kicks in and I want to go, I still have to have somebody prepare all my stuff, and I still have complicated things. They talk to me in a language that makes me want to die.
They talk. So this is why I say this a lot too, is that the numbers that help you run your business, most CPAs will say, we give you that, the profit and loss statement, the balance sheet, to which I say, I can't read it.
I can't read it.
And I know a lot of business owners and entrepreneurs can't read it, but none of them want to say they can't read it because the bank wants it and the CPAs give it to them, and both of them are important to their business. So they just think, well, I better not say out loud I can't read this because it might look bad. I'm not one of those guys that cares. So I just said, look, I can't read them. I built a successful business without being able to read this. I don't have a college degree. So you're like on the other side. You've got this uber college degree. You're a lawyer. And then I just, no one's told me what I can't do.
Confident about reading financial statements.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. Education, some people just have that. So that's why I'm so passionate about trying to find numbers that help us run the business better. And I've studied a lot of areas to try to figure that out.
Cool.
So your dashboard actually, so my vision is that your dashboard will be able to serve up these key, they're basically KPIs for accounting.
That's exactly what we do, right? That's what we do.
But will help certain industries. Like now you'll probably come up with KPIs that work for everybody. And as your model gets bigger and more data comes in, you'll be able to say, well, we have special KPIs just for restaurants, table turns, or something to that effect. Yep. How much money should we spend? I mean, a lot of people say, well, how much money should I spend on advertising? No one knows the answer to that. Most accountants can't answer it. We should be able to answer that.
Yeah,
we should be able to.
Yeah, you're right. You should, because you have a trend line. You know what the industry standard is. You know acquisition stuff. You're right. And so if I spend $100,000 and get $200,000 in revenue, how much money do I spend on marketing? As much as I can. Because if every dollar is doubling, and then there's going to be a point where it doesn't double anymore. That's right. So I'll spend and it'll but no one's really tracking any of that. They're just kind of the whole world flying by the seat of his pants. And I think one of my favorite things to do on this show is talk about what's the biggest struggle you're having right now.
Personally?
Oh, okay. If you want to go there, well, wherever you want to go with this. But what's the biggest struggle you're having in business right now?
I would say speed. I know what needs to be done, and the fact that I have to repeat it. Something will come up in the business, and I will have to say, "See, I told you this. If we didn't do these sets of things, that this would happen."
How do you deal with your mind seeing around the corner, wishing you were already 3 months ahead in development and in implementation, knowing that you're always going to be 90 days ahead of everybody else? How do you deal with that?
Yeah, wine.
Alcohol and drugs. It always comes
that's why I'm in that. It always comes back to chemicals. Better living through chemistry. So it's, I think that is the quintessential entrepreneurial question, and I don't know if there's an answer to it. I've been through I'm an EO. I've seen a lot of speeches where the entrepreneur said, "This is the deal."
Yep.
And this is the deal that most people don't understand. I think Dan Sullivan said it best. We have Ferrari brains with bicycle brakes, and that's a problem.
I always like that bugger. He says some of the coolest things.
He does. It's because he's surrounded by it. He's us, and he's surrounded by
he's he's been doing it. He's been living in the trenches doing it
for like 40 years now. Sorry,
Dan, you are a little older than us, so we're allowed to say
you are, but you're a rock star. So
he's a total rock star. Every time I'm around him or with him, he's a sage when it comes to.
He is. He just talks and.
He's just like, I need that. So one of the things that we do here, and Rachel and I work at this, is I got to be careful to test out my ideas with the masses, because everyone suddenly thinks we're doing different things. So we put a little shelter around me, and there's 1 or 2 people that I'm allowed to test ideas with before we roll out and implement. And they have permission to push back on me without it being suddenly a new idea for the company. Because what we learned is if too many people hear me thinking out loud, we're all over the place. We're suddenly this kind of company. We're that kind
right.
of company. And
which is something that you have to clip. You can't think out loud with certain people.
Right.
Because it could be damaging to the organization.
Yeah,
I've actually controlled that.
We've lost one of our best people, and I wrote about it in our book that I wrote a book called CEO's Mindset. I'm not sure if you read it. I think I gave that copy to you, but in there I talked about how I lost one of my best people over this thing. I would go into a meeting with her. I loved talking with her. I didn't know in her mind every time she left the meeting she thought she had a new job.
Right. Which to us is, so what I've done so this I can help a little bit with this because I've actually had to solve for this as well. So what I did is I built a kind of a visual picture of how I see the business, how I'm how I'm connecting pieces. Because our business is exceptionally complex.
Yeah.
We've got a membership program for our financial advisors. We have a membership program for accountants. We have a software program for accountants. We have the tax blueprint, which is a product that both advisors and accountants sell to the end user. We have the tax operating system, which is what someday I want to mold that into fully accountable. And then we have all the wealth management, managed money, life insurance. We're adding health insurance. So it looks like we're doing a lot of different things, but we're not. It's all part of one very close-knit universe. So the joke I use is that if I want to start a bar that says it's called a financial gravity bar, and I tell people that, well, it's part of financial gravity, it's branding. They can say, wait, you drew this picture, and I see where accounting fits, and I see where wealth management, I don't see where a bar fits anywhere in, I mean, if you bought a accounting firm, I get that. A bar doesn't fit. So they all kind of understand that now and there's a thing for this, it's called organizational whiplash. You don't want to pull the organization back and forth. And our minds are working so fast. And sometimes we wonder we have bad ideas out loud.
Whoa. Now maybe you do, but
I have lots of it. I will say something and go, wow, in my head, that was genius. Now that I said it out loud, not so genius. I'm sorry for speaking.
Or actually even worse.
You should have heard it up here. It was great.
Even worse, when someone on the team, and usually Rachel, repeats it back to me, I'm like, who's the idiot?
Ooh, that's terrible. That was your idea. That's not what I was thinking. Yeah, so you got to be careful on that kind of stuff because someone that's a literal person that wants to follow a list is hearing your bad idea and thinking of all the things they need to do, and you may just be pontificating. I had, by the way, had to solve this with my spouse. So there was a certain point where I couldn't share stuff with her, not because I don't love her and she doesn't love me. It just was creating friction that was unnecessary. So now I actually don't talk to her at all about things going on in my head until it's a little further. Yeah, at all. It's been great. We get along famously. I found out I'm the problem. Yeah, so I actually have clipped what I talked to her about and now I just process more. Or I have friends like a guy like you. This is where you need, I'm part of EO and it's a forum, so I can kind of bounce ideas off of guys that will say to me, that is really, really stupid. And you need people that will say, that's really, really stupid.
All right. Hey, we're almost running out of time. A couple of things I want to address. I love what you said earlier. Can we repeat it for everybody? Your accountant doesn't do what?
Your accountant doesn't do two things. They don't help you lower your personal income taxes, and they don't give you numbers that help you run your business.
All right, so
you need both.
If I like this message, I'm an owner, I hear that, and I go running back to my accountant, what's the response I expect to hear?
Yeah, we do that. But they don't, because you won't get personal income taxes. You'll ask them. So this is the way I get you to vet your accountant. There's a tax strategy. It's called the 14-day rental rule. Anybody can look it up. Look under Augusta rule. So it was named after the golf course in the 2 weeks master tournament. So it's 14. You can rent your house to yourself 14 days.
Right. Yep.
It's been in the tax code decades. And it's tax free.
Yep.
So I can pay myself $1,000. It's an expense of the business, but it's not income. You can even use it if you're doing Airbnb. So the question is, why hasn't, if you own a small business, you've done some business at home, why hasn't your accountant recommended that strategy? Because virtually every small business owner can use it. And that strategy at 25% tax bracket will save you $3,000 to $4,000 a year.
Probably pay your tax bill. But I mean,
you can pay your accountant. Your accountant ends up being free. Yeah, nothing we do is actually an expense because everything comes from the tax savings. So ask that one question. How come you're not implementing the Augusta rule? Well, I think it's a red flag. It's been in the tax code for decades.
Well, I think that alone, I'd love to help encourage everyone listening today. The goal should not be to avoid audit. It's make sure you can win it. Because everyone listening, I want you to hear this. There is a greater likelihood of being just pulled randomly for audit than there is at all being under a manual review. So you can't avoid being picked.
It's less than 1% right now. The statistical the statistics to save, we're saving on average $21,000 a year. You're
Nice.
trying to tell me you're willing to pay $21,000 instead of a 1% chance of being audited?
But even if that 1%, the right question is
And our statistics go down, by the way.
Audit? Can I win the audit? That should be the question, right? Not do I avoid it? And so, all right, listen, we're running out of time. We got a little in the weeds there again. I love it. That's what we do. We sell hard things, John, right? So
we do. We sell hard things, and it's life changing, which is weird.
What do you
It
like?
should be easier to sell life changing stuff.
What do you like the most about it?
I love that it changes people's lives. We had a, and I can probably say this on your show, but we had a McDonald's franchisee with 6 McDonald's, so they're killing it. But she worked for 5 years without taking a paycheck and kept buying McDonald's. Now they're multimillionaires. When we did their tax plan, we saved them so much money. They hired 2 full-time managers and went on their first vacation ever.
It's great.
Changed their life. Now they're stashing $500,000 in a specialized account, which taught them how to do, all of it legal, all of it in the tax code for decades. Major corporations use the strategy, and they're stashing about $500,000 a year tax-free, which, by the way, in 4 years, they can use that money to buy another franchise. So they can now cut banks out of their entire experience.
All right, so
Life-changing.
I love it. Changing lives. John, I want to thank you for being a guest. If we want to find you, what's the best way to find you again?
Go to Financial Gravity. If you're a financial advisor, go to financialgravitypartner.com, and you can see some of the programs there, but Financial Gravity, or here, I'll give a free book. Text to 33444, the word tax book, one word, 33444 tax book, and you'll get a text. You just put in your email and you'll get a book of the 10 biggest myths about taxes for small business owners that actually costing you thousands.
Right.
You can just read that book and implement stuff and take that to your accountant and say, I want to do this.
That's so good. John, thanks for being on the show today, bud. I really appreciate your time. And hey, everybody out there, on the Total CEO, listen, even though this subject seemed like it got in the weeds a little bit, this is really the difference between businesses that truly have exponential growth and the ones who don't, are the ones who literally pay attention to stop giving all your hard-earned money away when you don't have to. Vinnie Fisher here, Total CEO. Have a great day.